Hello and welcome to our pilot podcast, Critic Claire and Fan Geek. My name is Claire.
And I'm Cable.
And we're going to tell you a little bit about ourselves and discuss some film and TV news today, some film reviews and our hot topic. So I actually have a background in broadcast television through my studies, and I'm currently studying a PhD on supernatural teen television. I am a big TV and film junkie, obviously, because I'm doing a podcast. And Cable and I actually met doing our studies together at La Trobe University, and we made a film together. So I'll let Cable introduce himself, and yeah.
I didn't think we were going to mention the movie.
Sprung. It's all right. It's not on the internet or anything. There's no gratuitous nude scenes or anything. Nothing that exciting.
Yeah, well, I was born in the year of Empire Strikes Back, so that's one of my favourite movies. Yeah, I'm a big fan of film. Probably, unfortunately, grew up on the Hollywood blockbusters, so I probably haven't had the greatest appreciation over the years for independent film, but I do realise it's got a place, and a lot of my favourite movies have been those smaller productions and with a bit more realism instead of watching mindless Hollywood blockbuster rubbish. Are we going to talk about your favourite directors or movies?
Yes. We set ourselves the task of stating the top 5 film directors. I couldn't limit it to 5, so I've got 6. So it's Alfred Hitchcock, Clint Eastwood, David Fincher, Martin Scorsese, Quentin Tarantino, and Stanley Kubrick. How about you, Cable?
Wow. Well, I didn't even think about it, and my answer was going to be that I don't have a favourite director. I like a lot of directors, or like bits and pieces, but you've actually brought up...
That's a cop-out, sorry.
No, but hear me out. I was thinking... Okay. I was actually only going to say Scorsese, but in his last few movies, maybe it's a little bit different to what I've grown up with, that he's sort of branched out and maybe tried different things, so I haven't really got into... Not saying his new stuff's bad or anything like that, I just haven't maybe got into... I like his sort of gangster and New York stuff, so...
Have you seen Hugo or Shutter Island?
Yes.
Did you like those?
I did, but again, I guess it was not the normal Scorsese. I'm so used to him with De Niro and a bit of violence and stuff like that, so maybe that's why it's a little bit different. But Tarantino I like. Who else did you say? Oh, Hitchcock, of course.
Yes. Clint Eastwood?
I prefer Clint as an actor.
Okay, a little bit, yep.
But not to say his stuff's bad. It's not like I look for the Clint Eastwood movie coming out and I have to rush to the cinemas to see it. So, honestly, I know you're saying it's a cop-out, but I do like to just not necessarily judge it on a movie like being directed by someone. I like to see, that's something I would like to see, no matter whether it's directed by that. So I go, and if it's directed by Eastwood or Tarantino or Scorsese, it doesn't really bother me. But Fincher's actually quite good too. I did forget about David Fincher. And he has a very interesting start to Hollywood, directing Alien 3 and then dropping out on that. So what a way to start.
I did love Zodiac and Seven. I think for me they're the standouts. Gone Girl Gone was also good. Okay. Maybe not. But I've also read the book, and I liked the story. Not completely original, of course, but I still liked it.
Oh, look, I love Fight Club. I've got a mental blank. Panic Room.
Who?
Panic Room.
Oh, yes.
I love Panic Room. Yes. I love Seven. Seven's amazing.
Seven's great.
Yeah, so it's hard to believe that he started on a film that was probably doomed from the start, not by his own fault, in Alien 3, and the fact that he sort of even had a career after that. I'm glad he wasn't lost to Hollywood because of that movie. What was the last one you saw?
Stanley Kubrick. Are you a fan?
I wouldn't say I'm a major fan. I did go to Acme to see his exhibit a couple of years ago.
Right.
And that was amazing, and really to see all that stuff, and even just the behind the scenes, the stuff that never got made.
Yes.
And the detail he went into. I don't know if you know that he was putting together a movie on Napoleon.
Oh, okay, no.
And the amount of detail and years and books he read and, you know, just art and stuff, he pretty much built a movie, and all he had to do was get it greenlit by Hollywood or someone to put the money up, and it never came through. So, just his attention to detail and his patience in directing and redoing scenes and redoing to get it right the way he wanted is testament to his vision. And
and I know that, again, it's meant to be the top 5, and I'm going to add one more: Francis Ford Coppola.
Yep.
I just when you're talking about the dedication and just the eye for detail and the passion, I think it's the passion as well. Particularly when Apocalypse Now, great behind the scenes doco on the making of that, of course, Heart of Darkness. And if anyone is interested in filmmaking or films or watching them, I'd strongly recommend watch that doco, because have you seen that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Okay,
so
sorry.
I want to jump in because I've obviously come very underprepared, because now you've opened Pandora's box. But another
it's only an hour show.
Yeah, so. A director we could probably talk an hour on directors anyway, but another director I do appreciate, and a lot of his movies I've really enjoyed, and I still think they're sort of up there as my favourites, is Oliver Stone.
Yes.
So JFK, Platoon. I wasn't a massive fan of Born on the 4th of July, but Natural Born Killers I loved as well. So
yes. I think that some of these, we'll just talk about favourite TV shows, because we've spoken a lot about film. So, Kay, what are your all-time top 5 TV shows?
All-time top 5? Jeez, how can you really do that?
Have a go. Give us a go. Give us 5 good ones.
Well, anyone that really knows me knows I love Survivor, so I wouldn't say that's artistically one of the. I mean, it's reality TV at its best. But when you go for sort of movie, sort of production quality TV shows, I think I love Breaking Bad. I took a while to get into it, or I should say I got on it late, but everyone's like, oh, you'll love it, and I was sort of expecting not to love it, especially with I've forgotten the actor's name.
Yes, I've just drawn a blank. Bryan Cranston.
That's it. Yeah. I guess I've always seen him as Malcolm in the Middle and the dad, the quirky sort of dad, and that. So sort of seeing him in a serious role was a little bit different for me. I hadn't seen him in a lot of other stuff.
Quite a dark role too.
Yeah, absolutely. I love The Wire.
Okay, yes.
I loved The Sopranos. Sopranos is probably one of the best TV shows I've ever seen. So
yes.
And it might be just a HBO thing, but then True Detective as well was fantastic. So I think, I'm not saying TV shows can't be good if they're not on HBO, but I think it definitely adds. I don't know whether it's the financing, or they get better people in, or they can spend money, or they can just go all out with nudity, swearing.
It was the censorship,
censorship. Well, yeah. So I think there's definitely those shows are elevated by being able to be more realistic and more full on, a bit more in your face. So yeah, Sopranos. I'm pretty sure The Wire was HBO.
Yes.
Breaking Bad wasn't, but True Detective was, and even Boardwalk Empire. It's another show I've really enjoyed, and I'm still trying to catch up on. And there's a few more that they've got, like Sons of Anarchy, that people keep saying watch it. Game of Thrones I watch. I love that. But look, TV at the moment, I think we're very lucky as humans at the moment. I think there's some fantastic writers out there and directors, and the acting's getting better. So, sometimes you look back and think of the TV shows you used to love in the 80s and 90s, and then you actually go back and watch them on DVD, and they're really pretty average and corny. But you look at the TV we watch now. So I think we're pretty lucky, and I'm pretty happy with what TV has to offer at the moment.
I agree with you. I think we're very spoiled. Hannibal is my all-time favourite show, and just in terms of everything, because for me, a text, and I say text meaning film or television, it not only has to draw you in and engage you and be entertaining, but it also helps if it's beautifully crafted and constructed. And for me, Hannibal ticks both those boxes in a massive way. I agree with The Sopranos. I also agree with Game of Thrones and True Detective. I've also put here, and I'm going to cop a lot of...
If you say The Bachelor...
No. I'm going to say The Gilmore Girls.
Okay.
Love The Gilmore Girls. Also Oz. Fantastic. Yeah, of course, The Sopranos. And one of my... another trashy love is Law and Order SVU. All right, let's move on now to our film and TV news. So the BAFTAs were... the BAFTA Awards have been going on in the UK. And we're just going to quickly touch on some of the big winners for the awards. So we've got Boyhood has really cleaned up. Best film, best director, supporting actress. And we've also got Theory of Everything has done very well. Lead actor, outstanding British film and adapted screenplay. So that's really good to see. Now, Cable, you're going to talk us through some of the reboot news that's been going on. A lot of films are being rebooted all the time. What's going on and why are they doing it?
The question, I guess the easy answer is money. Look, I don't understand why sometimes. I think there's some classics and you just leave it alone. I think when Gus Van Sant did a shot-for-shot remake of Psycho, I think you can say, why? And then why are these reboots coming out? I think I read a review recently and I had to agree almost wholeheartedly. Someone was saying, of the recent reboots that have come out, the only ones that have been better than probably the originals or at least storyline wise and CG and all that sort of stuff visually is Planet of the Apes, Rise of Planet of the Apes and Dawn. If that's what you're into,
yes,
fantastic reboot of a series, making it, I guess, more realistic.
But also Tim Burton, to add, Tim Burton also has a wonderful imagination and he brought that fantasy, because he did one of them, didn't he?
No.
Didn't he?
No, he did a reboot. He did the first reboot of Planet of the Apes.
Yes. So I'm not completely...
with Mark Wahlberg.
Okay.
Yeah. So, he stepped it up a notch with making the apes, or that human actors as the apes.
Helena Bonham Carter, his partner at the time.
And Timothy Roth. And making it very realistic. But unfortunately, the storyline or whatever didn't grab people's attention or people didn't like it. So, of course... A few years later, we've got another reboot again.
Do you think? Sorry, just quickly on that. Do you think that people objected to humanising the apes in that way that Burton did? Do you think that was part of it, or was just a bit really weak plot and storyline? And
look, I enjoyed it personally, and I like the idea of humans tampering with DNA of animals, and then thus making them smarter or giving them that better DNA. So. Hence, in the future, when it was set, apes had become a dominant race through breeding. But I think a lot of people were very disappointed with the ending. I don't know if people were really happy with the acting so much, with maybe what Mark Wahlberg and a couple of the other human cast. And yeah, I just don't know if it had... The ending was terrible. Like the twist at the end, I know he tried to emulate... the Statue of Liberty in the original Planet of the Apes with Charlton Heston, but I don't know. I think it didn't give enough leeway for a sequel or continuation of that story. I think, I just think it left people with a bit of a sour taste in their mouth, and obviously 20th Century Fox agreed, and no more sequels from that point. So the reboot that's happened in the last couple of years has been really good.
So do you think that most of the main reason to do reboots is commercial? It's just profits? Do you think that what it is?
I think it's that, but I think, well, at the end of the day, Hollywood's about making money, isn't it?
Yes.
And putting out a product and making as much money as you can, or at least trying to put out a good product. And that's why they go back to something that existed in their past that made money and was popular, and it's like, let's redo this for a newer audience. We've got new special effects, we've got new techniques in cinema to make this movie better, or make it stand the test of time. But I just think there's some movies I just don't know if they need to be remade, and I think we've seen it in the last few years that couple of Paul Verhoeven films in Total Recall and RoboCop have been remade, but they're classic 80s classics. Yeah, they've got their violence. Okay, the special effects might look a little bit funny now, but I think trying to remake those movies that were rated R at the time, in the American classification, they were rated R, which is probably an MA here in Australia.
Yeah.
They've tried to make these movies the same, but with better effects or updated technologies, but they've tried to make it PG-13. I think there's some of those movies you just can't do that, and I think it's pointless. RoboCop being a remake, pointless, and was critically panned anyway. So, and same, I think Total Recall was, from memory, and that was the only one I did enjoy it. I liked the different perspective that wasn't set on Mars, but overall it was a dumbed down version of the Arnold Schwarzenegger version of Total Recall.
So what do you think, because there's been a lot in the news about Ghostbusters, Fantastic Four. Ghostbusters, I know that's one of our personal favourites.
Yes.
Also, particularly for me, because it's my era of the original. What do you think of that? What do you think of remaking Ghostbusters?
It scares the shit out of me.
It's your nightmares.
Yeah, beg my pardon. Look, for a long time, I think there's been Ghostbusters fans right around the world, and you see it whether it's on Facebook or the Ghostbuster chat boards, all that sort of stuff. People have wanted to see a third one, and Harold Ramis and Ivan Reitman for years, and with obviously Dan Aykroyd's always been for a third one. Talks, a lot of script revisions, script ideas, moving the Ghostbusters forward, and maybe even having the original Ghostbusters sort of passing the baton or the torch onto a new generation of Ghostbusters. So there's been a lot of ideas out there, and a lot of fans have wanted to see something again. And I guess the only sticking point for a long time was Bill Murray's involvement. And you hear different rumours. You hear 1 minute he's like, no chance, and then other times he's like, yeah, I'm open to the idea. So, but then unfortunately Harold Ramis passed away probably 2 years ago now, and then Ivan Reitman sort of said, well, Harold's gone, I'm not really probably going to come back to direct. So I think for a while it was dead in the water, but Sony Pictures, who own the rights to Ghostbusters, were still pretty keen to revive the franchise. But having it a total reboot, I'm very sceptical. I'd love to see how they envision trying to have a new start. I don't know why you can't have it as a continuation. Like, if Bill Murray doesn't want to be involved, he doesn't have to be. Ernie Hudson, I know, was keen to come back. Dan Aykroyd, they don't have to necessarily be Ghostbusters anymore. They could be CEOs of the franchise or whatever and pass the torch to the next generation. But I don't want to sound sexist, but I just feel with this all-female Ghostbusters, I feel it's... I don't understand that. I don't understand why it has to be all-female. I don't know why it can't be a mix. I think, men and women working together, to me, it makes more sense, and I think it would be more funny than just having 4 female Ghostbusters in a totally rebooted format.
That's also part of the appeal and the gimmick, almost, isn't it? That to sort of a reboot, I guess they have to justify why they're doing a reboot and add a twist or adds a fresh look. Yep. And I guess having an all-female cast kind of does that, really, doesn't it?
It does. But like, as a purist, like Paul Feig's come out and said that it's going to be a completely new reboot. So it will not reference the original 2 movies and will be not a continuation of that storyline. But he said there will be, for the fans, there will be nods to the original.
I'm just heartbroken because I'm going to confess how old I am. My first record at the age of 10 was 1982 Out of the Blue. Yes, I am that old. And it had the Ghostbusters soundtrack from Ray Parker Jr. Are they going to have... I think some films, for me, are so iconic in cinema history, and Ghostbusters is one of them. Who are you going to call? Everyone knows that line. Everyone knows. It's like, go ahead, make my day. And the theme song, all those things are so iconic, and I think reboots in some regards are just cheap commercial attempts to cash in on the original success and popularity of the film. Like Spider-Man, what the... And we've now got the Fantastic Four being rebooted. So all of those things, and I'm not even going to mention Psycho because that is, Alfred Hitchcock is the holy grail of cinema. Don't go there. You know, I'm actually even struggling. Someone's recommended Bates Motel to me. I'm struggling because it's sacred ground and you don't tread on sacred ground. So we're just going to wrap up the film and TV news. Did you have any last comments on the reboot saga?
Last comments on the Ghostbusters one or the
Indiana
Jones?
Anything. Oh, Indiana Jones. What's going on there?
Well, they're talking about a reboot. I don't know how far down the track that's going, but they're talking about Chris Pratt, who's come out of nowhere.
Yes, hasn't he?
Obviously was the voice of Emmett in Lego Movie. He's going to be in the new Jurassic Park movie.
Was it Guardians of the Galaxy he was in?
Guardians of the Galaxy, which was very popular. And he's had some other roles in, I think, a bit of TV and that. To be honest, I should have looked it all up. But, look, you know, I don't mind him. I think he would be a great Indiana Jones. But again, having it as a reboot, I just don't know why it needs to be a reboot. Because I'm pretty sure he'd be almost still younger than Harrison Ford when Harrison Ford first played Indiana Jones. So I don't know why it can't be still part of that universe and he could be it's just, I guess, a prequel or just set a couple of years before, you know, Raiders of the Lost Ark or whatever, just like the TV series Young Indiana Jones was. I mean, why reboot it? Or why call it a reboot? I just think just make it it's a sequel. It's a sequel or prequel, however you want to call it. I'm a bit mystified why they'd have to totally reboot it. Like, I understand why they did it sort of for James Bond, to have a new fresh start, Daniel Craig come on board, let's go back to the original book, Casino Royale, and then start setting up the pieces to how, you know, James Bond should be and how Moneypenny came in and M and all that sort of stuff. And I think that's been successful. So maybe they've seen that template and seen what's worked. Maybe that's the direction they're going to take. But
that with Bond, and you make a great point, because they actually they went back to, as you said, they went back to the original books and how Bond was in the original Ian Fleming books, and he was, as M says, a blunt instrument. And then through the course of the all the Bond films, you've got Pierce Brosnan, who's quite refined, and you could even argue almost delicate compared to Sean Connery. So it's interesting that, you know, it goes through, the Bond character goes through all these changes, but it was actually, I found really refreshing to get the Bond character back to its roots and start it again, as you said, for a new generation to come in and go, oh, who is this dude? I've kind of known, you know, my parents and my grandparents used to watch him. What's going on? And I think that was more purposeful. It wasn't just let's cash in on a huge franchise and cha-ching, but let's do it in a more creative reasons.
I think in Bond being the example too, I think Die Another Day was the 20th film, starring Pierce Brosnan, and I think they went too far to the extreme of trying to reference the previous 40 years of when Bond first started and put all those in jokes and having stuff in the background. They go, oh, look at that was from Goldfinger and all that sort of stuff. Yes. And it was a terrible fucking movie. But I don't think that was Pierce Brosnan's fault, but it was just terrible. It was just ridiculously it was terrible. And I think they needed to refresh and get the franchise back on track, and I think they just sat down, took a bit of time, and let's start again. Let's really get the right writers in and actually plot out a course for this James Bond instead of just making a film after film.
Exactly right.
And I just hope like they probably do that with Ghostbusters and Indiana Jones, but I feel like this success of Casino Royale is one of those reboots, and with Planet of the Apes, that these studios think they can go back to these pre-existing properties and make more money, but you got to get it right from the get-go.
Yes. All right, well, let's move on to our film reviews. So it's awards. Well, we're coming towards the end of the awards season, as we all know. We've had the Golden Globes, the SAG Awards. We've also had just recently the BAFTAs, and we're waiting now for the 2015 Oscars. So we're going to talk first about Birdman. Birdman is a film which looks at an actor who's had some success in a superhero franchise in an attempt to revitalise or revive his career. He's gone back to a play adaptation just on Broadway, and he's struggling. He's struggling with what he wants to do, who he is, and his own success. Starring Michael Keaton and Edward Norton and also Naomi Watts, just to name a few. So, Cable, what did you think of Birdman?
I was pleasantly surprised. I did enjoy it, but there were moments where I was not sure where it was going. I think artistically or visually it was fantastic. I think the attempt or I guess the success of having it seem like it was one continuous shot.
Yes. For
most of the film, look, extremely ambitious, and I think I read somewhere that when the director had told a few of his other director friends or people within the business about this attempt that he was going to do, they all sort of said it would be a failure and it's just too stressful and why would you do that and just keep it sort of simple. But yeah, I really liked it. I like Michael Keaton, so I think it was really good. I found it sort of funny that he was playing that character, which really was just a reflection of his own life. He played Batman for 2 movies, in 1989 and 1991, and then stepped away from that franchise when he was wanted for a 3rd movie, and Val Kilmer obviously took his spot because Michael felt that he was almost pigeonholed into that kind of role. So, yes. And it took a lot out of him. So him stepping away and doing this, it just seemed like it was almost he was playing himself, really.
Art imitating life.
Yeah. I guess I don't want to give too many spoilers away. I don't want to say too much, but I thought Edward Norton was fantastic in it. Naomi Watts, Emma Stone was good. I thought all the actors were really good in it.
There's a particular scene. So we should just also mention, and I apologise for my mispronunciation. Alejandro Iñárritu, I think that's how you say it. He's the director, and he did 21 Grams, Babel. Also some Mexican short films, and I think he did a beautiful job. There's also a lovely scene with Emma Stone where she is talking to her dad and saying about being relevant. And I thought that was lovely because you've got her character who's, is at the beginning trying to buy him flowers and saying, oh, I can't smell the flowers. It all smells like kimchi because she's in the Korean, little Korea sort of marketplace. And so she's obviously troubled and there's some anger issues there. But then she comes out of left field, seemingly, with this really insightful moment about trying to stay relevant. And I thought that was really powerful. I also like Zach, again, mispronunciation, I apologise. Yes. I was actually lucky because the first performance I saw of his work wasn't, surprisingly, it wasn't The Hangover. It was a TV series called Bored to Death. I don't know if you've ever seen it. I haven't, but I know of it. Yeah. And he was great in that. He actually had a really good range, and he could go from being really sort of negative and down and putting himself down to being quite insightful. And I think that it was lovely to see him step out of the kind of wolf pack, the lad kind of role into this kind of, look, you've got to get your shit together, we're putting on a show. So I really liked that. Michael Keaton I thought was just brilliant. It was lovely to see him in a vehicle that allowed him to show off his acting chops, which he hasn't done in a while. Well, I don't think he's done anyway. And I also loved the satirical comment on our current obsession with comic book characters coming into film. They had Spider-Man and a Bumblebee in one scene, and it's kind of like, oh fuck, that's what everyone's after. That's the most popular kind of thing at the moment. So I liked all of that. I thought this was a great film.
I'm not 100% certain when this movie was actually filmed,
Right.
I'm assuming not that long ago, but
Yes.
I did notice on one scene, on one of the when he was on a rooftop, without giving any spoilers away, I won't say what was happening, but in the background you could actually see a billboard for Man of Steel as well.
Yes.
I was wondering whether that was a digitally placed there, or that was pre-existing, but I got the feeling, just with, like you say, with the Spider-Man, that was obviously put there intentionally by the director,
Yes.
just as another subtle sort of look back at the Hollywood system and obviously the love of superheroes.
Yes. And I do love... I loved Edward Norton. I always love his work. It doesn't matter what he does, but I thought he was particularly wonderful in this, and particularly the scene on stage with his, so-called real-life partner, Naomi Watts.
Yeah.
I thought that was fantastic. I don't know if you ranked this, but I gave this 9 out of 10. I was really, really excited with this, and it was really good.
I actually go, I don't know if you're going to accept this score, but I actually go 8.5.
Okay.
So if we're doing 0.5s, or if you want to scrap the 0.5s.
I've got some 0.5s here, it's okay.
All right, well. No, I did really enjoy it. I'll be honest, I think it was something I enjoyed, but my partner wasn't really understanding what was going on a bit. And I can understand it's probably not everybody's cup of tea. So, no. I mean, you and I appreciated the acting and obviously the visual stuff and also the story, but, it's not going to be, someone else might see it and go, that's a 3 out of 10 kind of thing. So,
yes.
I hope people do enjoy it if they go and watch it after they've heard this review.
It's worth definitely seeing. When it first started, I was like, oh, get your hand off it, come on, another pretentious bloody film. But it's refreshing. I think it looks at behind the scenes in an actor's world, and it has some creative license. You've got to be willing to just go with, allow yourself to be suspended and use your imagination. They say that film is suspension of disbelief. So you've got to put your critical and analytical hat on the shelf a little and just be willing to go, cool, let's see where this film goes. So I think if you can do that, there's certainly a lot of joys to be found there.
With that, again, not to spoil the movie, did you think the ending was ambiguous?
I have to remember the... I've forgotten
I don't know.
the ending.
I sort of sat back and I was trying to rack my brain and it's like, well, what?
Was that terrible? I've forgotten the ending. Oh, yes. I think it was fitting. At the beginning, there are moments where it's almost surreal, or if I can use a term from literature and film genre, which is magical realism, which is depicting everyday real life things in more magical and fantastic ways. And when you first, at the very beginning, you see Michael Keaton when he's introduced on screen, you're kind of like, what? Huh? What's going on? And I was concerned that they would overdo that technique, but they didn't. And I think the way it's used, it's symbolic of his emotions and his psychological state, and also his desires, what he's yearning for, what he's actually looking for. It's actually not success in his career. We might leave that there. So now we're going to look at Boyhood. I think you should start us off with Boyhood and tell us a bit about...
Really? You want me to start?
I want you to start and tell us a little bit about the plot, who's in it.
The plot?
Yes.
Who's in it? Jeez.
No pressure.
No, that's a lot of pressure. Seeing this is episode 1. I don't want it to be the Phantom Menace.
I can help you out. There's no problem.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I've got a bit of a cough there. Look, the one thing I tried not to really read too much into, like with all these movies we decided to watch, I tried not to know too much about them before watching them. Didn't want to prejudge. Didn't want to know too much. But I knew going in that story was going to span a few years, not realising it is actually a 12-year vision, I guess, which is amazingly ambitious. And I think, look, props. I understand why he's getting a lot of pats on the back and why it's getting rave reviews, because I think to have the patience to plot out a story and follow firstly the boy and by extension his family over a 12-year period. Look, anything could have gone wrong in that 12-year period that could have probably thrown a real spanner in the works. So, I mean, to have that dedication to really... look, there's a lot of questions I have. I'd love to know technically behind the scenes how he sort of... whether he had all the story down or he was just trying to get... even maybe the actor that played the boy, whether the storyline was already mapped out or whether they kind of...
Can I jump in?
Yeah, go for it.
No, I was just going to jump in with the plot and the key players.
Yeah.
So, Boyhood follows the journey of a young boy growing up, and his parents. It's the trials and tribulations of basically transforming from a boy to a young adult, and it follows. It has some soap opera elements. It follows the path that his mother takes. So he lives with his mother. His parents are divorced. The director is Richard Linklater, who's known for Slacker, Before Sunrise, Dazed and Confused, and School of Rock. They're his most famous works, I guess. It stars Ethan Hawke, Rosanna Arquette, and I've just forgotten the young guy's name.
Patricia
Arquette. I'm sorry.
There's
Wrong
a few
family
Arquettes.
member. There's a David. Patricia Arquette.
Alexis.
We love you, Rosanna, but it is Patricia Arquette. We love you too. Yes, I apologise. So there we go. Alpha Cotran. I can't read my own writing. So that's the plot, and it, as Cable has accurately said, the director has decided to take a more literal approach and have the film production over a 12-year period, following each of the actors as they physically change and obviously their characters as they evolve. As you were. So did that technique or device of filming the film over that period, did that work really well for you?
It did. I was actually surprised how seamless it was. I mean, you could almost believe it was filmed in the one, as a normal movie, but in that 6-month period and then edited together, and you could almost believe it was, but 12 years, I mean, even the technology of the cameras or the equipment that's used to put a movie together these days would have changed in that 12 years, and just to think how seamless and there's techniques to make that seamless anyway, but it just, you sort of, in the back of my head I was thinking you're going to sort of see a difference.
Yes.
But
I do agree in the technical aspects, it was fantastic. And even as you said, just the logistics of getting actors to commit to such an extended period and to being called back at various times to complete various scenes, that in itself is quite a feat too.
Well, it is. I did do a little bit of research, and I mean, IMDb is the place to go generally if you want to look for stuff like little trivia bits. And I was sort of thinking about, again, I was thinking worst case scenario. What if one of the actors passed away in the meantime, or something, or the boy or the main actor or Ethan Hawke decides, no, I don't want to be a part of it, or busy doing something else. I mean, how are they? Does that change the script? Does a movie cease to exist, or does that get thrown out, kind of thing? So I was sort of worrying. I was sort of, again, the director in me was thinking those sort of things, like how do you make sure people stick to the plan?
Yes.
And because I think his daughter played the sister, Samantha. Samantha.
I think that was a bit...
You've got your issues with that, but one of the little trivia tidbits apparently was the daughter, when she found out her dad was going to do this project, she was like, I want to be in it, and he was reluctant. Finally, so said, okay, you can play Sam or play the sister, and then after a couple of years, she's like, I don't want to do it anymore, and she even said, Dad, just kill me off in the movie. So obviously that little things like that can throw them a big spanner in the works, but obviously he probably sold her on something else and then she stuck it out. But I mean,
it's a pity you didn't. Look, to be honest, I'm going to jump in here. Look, for all the reasons that we've just mentioned, it was good, but the movie is 2 hours and 45 minutes long, and I appreciate the feel and the metaphor that Linklater was aiming for. He's included a lot of scenes which perhaps feature more mundane day-to-day events to demonstrate, this idea of a documentary feel almost of what life is like. However, I think that he overplayed. He expected too much of his audience and overplayed that technique. If you remember, I don't know if you've seen Gus Van Sant's Elephant, and that's a film based on the Columbine massacre in the high school. He received critique or negative feedback for having the camera follow a boy running down high school corridors, empty high school corridors, or walking down them. And the point was to show how mundane life is that this is what we do. We have to go and play video games with our friends or walk down a high school corridor. But Gus Van Sant, the master that he is, another favourite director, just FYI, I think the thing is he controlled it, he reined it in, and I think this film would have benefited from a good edit. I think there was too much content, and I think that detracted. I think the thing is that Linklater expects a lot of his audience, and what he's delivered, well, it's great, but we kind of get it. I felt like it was beating a dead horse after a while, and I think if there had been a really critical editing eye applied to this film, it would have been a lot stronger. Okay, but what do you think?
Overall, maybe I'm being fooled, I guess, a bit like a lot of people, in my opinion, that we see the technical side of things. I think that's amazing, the fact that they've done this, and this. Yeah, absolutely. I'd stand up and give him a round of applause for what he put in place, and this vision he had, and he stuck to it over 12 years and built this story. But is the story that great? I just don't know. I know before I'd seen it, you had discussed some things that you just didn't really enjoy about the movie. I probably disagreed a little bit, maybe, and this is not having a go at you, but maybe me being male and being a boy and having some of those same experiences he had in those younger years, I felt like, I forgot I used to do stuff like that. Or, when he was, I think in one of the early scenes, he's got a spray can, he's graffitiing a wall, and little things like that you do as a kid, or the peer group pressure, or have this beer and that. So there's things that I sort of, what's the word?
Appreciated?
No.
You reminisced?
Reminisced is one. I did write it down here. I could associate with, sorry, I should say. So there were definite elements that I was made me think about my childhood and growing up and those issues. But then, having said that, I just don't know if I liked him as a character enough to care.
Yes, and that sounds exactly right.
Probably sounds terrible, but I think he went on a certain path, and I was like, I don't know if I like him enough that I give a shit anymore.
I think you've hit it on the nail on the head. I agree.
And that probably sounds terrible because everybody's different, everyone's unique, and we all go different paths. But I felt like I could get along with this kid as a kid, and we could have been friends or ride bikes and all that stuff. But as he got older, I'm like, he's kind of unlikable. I did like Patricia Arquette in it. I did like Ethan Hawke. But the other thing I couldn't associate with, and look, I think I'm just thankful every day that my family have always been fantastic, and I've never had any, my parents never used to fight, they never got divorced or anything like that. So having seen this boy going through these issues where his mum's been divorced, so his dad lives in a different sort of city, or only sees his dad every few months, and then going through these different relationships and quite volatile relationships, one of them was, that's something I couldn't associate with. And again, it was like, well, I can't, that's just my opinion, or that's how I felt, but I was like, I just can't enjoy the movie.
I think the other thing too, and I think that you've hit the nail on the head, is that For me, one of the things that makes film or television very interesting is the engagement with the characters. I have to empathise or care or be interested in what happens, and I think that's one of the reasons I agree now, hearing you say it, is that I didn't care about this kid. I'm not saying, I wanted him to be bashed up or anything, but I wasn't invested in the journey. I was sitting watching this and I was getting through it. But I do agree, I think that it is nice, and I do like this return to these movies that go through more mundane, everyday things. I think that's lovely, because sometimes we just get a bit sick of superheroes and CGI and this, overly over-the-top, ridiculous kind of narratives that are really unrelatable in many ways. And I think sometimes it's nice to return to a well-crafted film that is about something that is more relatable to a lot of us. I ended up, Boyhood has cleaned up, as we said earlier, at the BAFTAs. Patricia Arquette won Best Supporting Actress at the SAG Awards. She also won the Golden Globe. She's been nominated for the Oscar. So there's obviously the critics are raving about this film. I felt it was too long. I felt that it just capitalised on that, novelty of filming it over 12 years too much. And I only gave it 5 out of 10.
5 out of 10?
Yes.
Very harsh.
Very harsh. Well, compared to a lot of the other films that I'd seen, it metaphorically speaking, it didn't blow my skirt up in the way that others did.
Yeah.
So what did you give it?
Well, I gave it a 6.5. I was actually pretty low as well. I mean, again, and that was probably even boosted, again, by its technical aspects, that how, what they did with it. But again, the storyline's got to hold your attention.
Yes.
And I think I told you before we started recording, I watched it over 2 sittings. So I probably watched an hour and a half and a bit, and then watched the last sort of hour in the second point. Not necessarily because I was bored, but it was like, you got things to do, and sometimes 2 hours and 45 minutes, unless it's amazing cinema.
But so doesn't that tell you everything?
Yeah.
I think that if it was, as I said, if it was edited down and there was more engagement with the central character, you would have made the time to watch a 2-hour movie. Let's move on to the theory of everything. This is our final review for this podcast. And I'll quickly give us the details and then we can get your thoughts, Cable. So the theory of everything is loosely based on the biography, it is based, I should say, on the biography of Stephen Hawking, who is the English physicist, and he is well known because of his debilitating disease, and he's also, Family Guy and Simpsons have all done comedies at his expense. But this film was directed by James Marsh, and he has a documentary background, and I think that certainly comes through in the film. Eddie Redmayne, who played Stephen Hawking, has done I thought he did a great job, and he, again, has been cleaning up in the awards. He won Best Actor, Golden Globe, he won the SAG, and he won the BAFTA. So he, obviously, if we look at those, we would consider that he might be a shoo-in for the Oscar. I also liked Felicity Jones as the wife. So your thoughts, Cable, what did you think of this one?
It was a movie going into it that I wasn't that enthralled to see. I mean, no disrespect to Stephen Hawking. I understand how important he has been to science and physics and a lot of his theories, and the fact that he's still living. He's 72 years of age, I believe.
Yes.
Look, I have respect for the man, but no disrespect, but I don't have a lot of interest in... I didn't have interest in seeing that. But having said that, for doing this podcast and watching it, I was, again, pleasantly surprised. I didn't know, obviously, anything about his life before, obviously, MS, and being at Cambridge and just being this genius. So it was good to see his early years. I think it started in 1963. Maybe.
Something like that. Yep.
And obviously, he, meeting Jane and then sort of going through the obviously getting the news that you've got MS and you've got 2 years to live and all those, but the fact that he just was able to fight on and stay on and you know what, well, my brain's still going to work. I'm still going to push the boundaries and I'm not going to just fade away into nothing. Yeah, so I actually did enjoy it, more so than I thought I was going to. But Redmayne, he was absolutely fantastic.
Yes.
I mean, playing that role and also trying to have him age enough, but also have the look of having certain limbs then become even more so, I guess, disabled over the journey. And looking back again, doing a little bit of research after I watched the movie, finding out that, of course, like most movies, they're not shot chronologically. Him having to keep a diary as to have the deterioration of his character and try and go back and be at the right kind of deterioration
stage
for that scene. So even him getting into that headspace of saying, well, oh, hang on, I'm going to be Stephen Hawking with MS 4 years on, I'm going to go back to that scene, and then the next one is 20 years.
Yes.
I mean, I think having to act and try and do that without, doing it obviously not in chronological order must have been a massive effort as well.
Yes, excellent point. And I think the thing for me is what struck me the most about his performance was that Stephen, the character, Stephen's pride really came through, his vanity, and the fact that he didn't really want to see how much his wife, his first wife, I'd sort of sacrificed and gave of herself so that he could live the life how he wanted, resisting, as we saw as the film progressed, resisting first a stick and then resisting a wheelchair and then resisting as it kept going, and resisting having home help and all of that because of his own sense of pride and independence, which was slipping away. And I thought, for me, I agree with everything that you said, but to have that is hard enough, but then to add to that, to have this multi-layered sort of character so the actor has to think of the stage of deterioration plus this angst about this independence and pride that the person was struggling with. And I thought he did that beautifully. I'm with you. I was not, I am aware of Hawking's work, just in mainstream popular culture and his contributions to cosmology and physics, and I was like, meh, I'm not, out of the sea of things to watch, it's not really on the top 20 really. But as I watched it, I, like you, was disarmed. I thought it was really charming. I thought it was beautifully done. I thought it was a nicely paced drama that had a nice balance of documentary feel. There were moments where it didn't dip into the melodrama, but then it was countered with these really emotional moments as well. I think one of my favourite scenes was when he's found out he's got this disorder or disease, and he tells his roommate at university, and his roommate thinks he's just, oh, you got the clap, and and he's joking around, and just his roommate just changing, that really subtle and change of the shock sinking in. I thought that was beautifully done. It wasn't overplayed at all. I really liked this one as well, and I gave it 8 out of 10.
I think I gave it the same score.
No, it isn't so.
I think I did, and me being a bit disorganised. Let me see. Yeah, I gave it 8. I did. Good film, and good on Eddie Redmayne. I think he deserves it. Felicity Jones is very good in it as well.
She was great.
We have to sort of, I guess all the hoopla is going to be about Redmayne playing that role, but I think the ensemble cast, everyone did their bit. And
one last point, and we really should move on. I was surprised, and I had to go and do my own research because I thought this is not right, where his wife, played by Felicity Jones, goes to the choir and falls in love with the choir master, and that they don't actually do anything. And I read up, and that was actually the case, like that they actually acknowledged their feelings. And even she told Stephen Hawking, and he said, look, for the moment, just don't do anything. I don't mind. You can spend time with each other, just don't have sex or anything. And they respected that. So that was actually quite, I was quite shocked at that. in this day and age. But anyway. Okay, so Cable's now going to talk about Cake.
Am I?
You're going to talk about Cake, and then I'm going to talk about Wild.
Okay. Well, Cake, again, was another movie that I hadn't heard anything really about. All I knew was Jennifer Aniston was attached to it.
So the plot?
The plot... I just don't want to give any spoilers. I guess the plot is, it follows Jennifer Aniston's character. We find her in the opening scene. She's at a... what's the word? A group meeting, counselling meeting with other people that have suffered suffer chronic pain. So we find out she's been in some sort of accident. She's got scarring on her face. She struggles about, and one of the girls in this chronic pain group has just recently committed suicide. So that's to start it off. I don't want to get too much in depth. Again, I don't want to spoil it because you find out little bits. You can kind of think you know what's going to happen, but there are little bits you pick up along the way.
So the $1 million question, was Jennifer Aniston overlooked because she really only received... She was only nominated in the Golden Globe and the SAG Awards. So she's missed out on a BAFTA nomination and a Oscar nomination. Was she cheated?
Was she cheated? Look, sorry, coughing again. Look, again, that was the other thing going into this movie. I'm not a autobiographer. I haven't seen everything she's been in, but I always felt like any time I've seen her in something, whether it's been Horrible Bosses or The Breakup or The Rumour Has It, she's really playing Rachel Green from Friends. Like, I don't feel like she's ever had much range, or whether that's them putting her in, boxing her or pigeonholing her into those roles, or she's putting her hand up for it, or I don't know. Never thought she had much acting range at all. But the thing that when I put the movie on, I was immediately just amazed at how different she was. She was already playing a different character. You know, she wasn't wearing makeup. I don't think she wore makeup in the whole movie. Again, doing the research, apparently that was the way she wanted to do it, and that's how they put it together to make her not look as attractive. She never wore makeup. She obviously had some sort of makeup to apply the scarring that she's supposed to have had from the accident. And it was refreshing to see Jennifer Aniston do something she hadn't done before. She's an interesting character in that maybe because of this accident, again, we don't know the full story about initially. She's quite a bitchy, selfish person, quite kind of unlikable, and again, it was just interesting to see her do something different. Was she cheated, robbed? I don't know. I can't remember all the nominations, but I think she was worthy of getting some sort of nomination or some sort of award.
Yeah.
Or nomination, maybe not winning it, but.
And did you like the direction? Did you like the way that they've unfolded the narrative?
Yeah,
and how that worked?
Look, the narrative, like the movie deals with issues of suicide.
Yes.
Obviously, the chronic pain is the issue, and then in turn that becomes with the drug dependency. Again, early on, without not being a spoiler or anything, but she obviously has an issue with drugs. She has a maid, or one of her. I guess in America, it's very popular to have your sort of the Mexican, almost mother figure that comes and helps clean your house and kind of looks after you.
Yes.
And even though they're working for you, they look after you like your family. So, I guess the movie deals with a loss as well. Obviously, with the suicide, she does meet the husband of the girl that has committed suicide. So, him dealing with that loss and having a child and now being a single father. And then for me, it came a bit full circle. I could see through all these issues that she had as a character, even though she can be a bitch and a bit selfish at times, at the core, she's a good person. She has a good heart, but obviously these things have attributed to pushing her down a certain a certain path. The direction, it was interesting. I thought it was a bit over the shop. I wasn't too sure. It wasn't exactly A to B, if that makes sense. I felt like, is she hallucinating? Is she schizophrenic? There was certain aspects of it. Again, early on, she sort of starts talking to the girl that's committed suicide. So, and one of those I'm pretty sure was in a dream sort of sequence. And then she's also dealing with her own sort of maybe suicidal thoughts. And some of it I was a bit confused about. It's something I'd probably sit down and watch again. But it was towards the end I got very emotional. I think it was one of those stories. Oh yeah, I don't want to give too much away.
All right. But what was your rating? Because we need to move this along.
I think I was about the same as most of the critics, actually. I think I gave it 7.
Okay.
7.
Good.
So again, I didn't hate it. It wasn't an absolute classic, but it's still worth watching, and even just to see Jennifer Aniston do something different. Sam Worthington's good in it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Thanks, Cable. Now, just before we end our podcast, our pilot podcast, we're going to do a hot topics segment. And this is a segment where there's a heated debate surrounding either a film or television. And our hot topic for today is American Sniper. So you've probably heard or read about some of the hype, and I'll cover it really briefly. One of the early comments was Michael Moore on his Twitter account. He mentioned that his uncle was killed in World War II by a sniper, and then he stated, "I was raised to see snipers as cowards." This, of course, caused a flurry of outrage that Michael Moore was, of course, referring to the film, and a lot of backlash. He's since then qualified that to explain that no, there were certain elements of the film he thought were great, but he was just sharing his views on snipers in general. Then, of course, Seth Rogen jumped onto the bandwagon, comparing American Sniper, or saying that American Sniper reminded him of the Nazi propaganda film from Quentin Tarantino's film Inglourious Basterds. And, of course, then he had to backtrack due to the heated backlash online, mainly through Twitter, Facebook, and he's then clarified further that no, he likes the film. He wasn't saying that it's a propaganda film. He was just simply saying that it reminded him of that film. I think my favourite then additional comment was Kid Rock responding to Seth Rogen saying, "Oh, Seth, your uncle probably molested you." So he's, poor Kid Rock, get off the drugs, sweetheart. He's obviously confused the two events. And then there was also the scandal with Jesse Ventura, which we don't really have time to go into. Let's talk about the film. Now, I think Cable and I have very different views on the film. So American Sniper, just to bring you up to speed in case you are not aware of the film for some reason, it's directed by Clint Eastwood, one of my favourite directors, and it is based on the book by I can't remember the author's name. It's based
Chris
on
Kyle.
Yes, no. The book's written by someone else.
Yep.
So it's based on the biography of an actual person, Chris Kyle, who was in the Navy SEALs as a sniper in the war in Iraq, who did several tours. And it's showing his time from joining the SEALs, doing several tours, juggling that with family life, and then after he left the Navy SEALs. Now, some of the controversy, I think for me, the problem is that people are just blurring what Clint Eastwood has done with the actual real person, Chris Kyle. There were elements in his book that were not featured in the film. In the book, he has very strong views on some of the Iraqis that he was fighting against that were quite racist. In the film, I believe, I can't remember myself, but I believe that he calls them savages in the film. It's also very graphic. And I think because of the current political climate with ISIL and a lot of the terrorist acts that are happening around the world, I think that temperatures are running high and people have started to have knee-jerk reactions about this film. And for me, a lot of the opinions are confusing the issues. They are confusing Clint Eastwood's efforts with the real person, and then, you know, with the fear of the backlash against Muslims in real life. So there's a lot of different issues flying around. Cable, what are your thoughts on American Sniper, first as a film?
As a film, look, I did enjoy it. I won't lie about that. But seeing a few other war movies over the journey or over my life with, you know, Platoon and Saving Private Ryan and movies like that, I think this movie is a bit overrated. I did love Bradley Cooper in it, and I did like a lot of the visual stuff, but I think a lot of the, you know, people that are going on and on about it like as if it's a classic, it's just, I think it'll be one of those movies in a couple of years that won't be really talked about that much. It won't be in 10, 20 years talked about as one of the classic movies. I don't think should be classified as a classic. The hype, or sorry, the negative feedback, and I find that interesting. Again, it's maybe a little bit different for us being here in Australia. We're not in the heart of in America, where obviously either people love war, people don't. People agree with it.
But then we're not untouched. I mean, if you look at Martin Plaza, Sydney with the Lint Cafe, I mean, you know, terrorism, once upon a time I could agree with you, but we're not completely removed as we might have been previously.
I understand that. I just more so from the whole patriotism of America and the fact that he's like, no, we want to be free here. I have to go over there to make you guys safe. And that whole issue about his wife and his kids, the family, he thinks he's doing the right thing by going there, but they're like, we are safe here. You're the father, you're my husband, you should be here. And him having that sort of almost that separation from his family because he feels like he's doing the right patriot thing to do. And I think that's very different here in Australia. So I find it, I just don't know, because I don't live in America. I don't fully understand it. You're either a patriot or you're not, or you feel like if you don't go to war, you're not a patriot, or, you know.
I do. It's interesting. I had a previous partner who was actually in the army and served in the Falklands War, and he explained to me that when you're part of the armed forces, you have to. They encourage, the culture is such that they encourage this very one-eyed view that you have to have loyalty to your country and your family, and that's it. And that you have to protect them because they're always vulnerable. And I sort of, you know, a part of me years ago, an immature, naive part that was ignorant about a lot of stuff, used to think, oh, what a load of horseradish. You know, that's just ridiculous. But I do now have a deep appreciation that in a combat type, in the theatre of war, as they say, in a combat type situation, it has to be black and white. It kind of really has to be. That is a separate issue, though, to whether or not the US government should have been in Iraq. And that's the problem as well, is that people are conflating these issues. For me, I think I agree with you. It sort of borders on jingoism, this over sickly, patriotic, American patriotic thing that we don't necessarily have in Australia. So we don't view it in the same way. We're a little bit more cynical and a bit more laid back. So we don't have that. But the other thing too is I viewed the film differently. One of the reasons I love Clint Eastwood as a director is he's unashamedly willing to explore male emotions and the psychological state of men in various positions, particularly more traditional male roles, such as the war veteran in Gran Torino, such as, you know, the soldier in this and his other previous works. And he does so very, I believe, he does so in a very really subtle, delicate way. I don't think that, for me, this film does not glorify war. That's some of the criticism people have launched at this film. for me, it very clearly shows he struggled.
Yeah.
He was suffering from post-traumatic distress. And I think the violence was necessary to shock a lot of us who are privileged, who have never had been in a life and death situation and probably won't.
Yeah.
And to have a gun pointed at you, knowing that if you don't do something, you could die.
Yeah.
And also in relation to the children, that person I spoke of previously, at the Falklands War, he experienced the same thing, and it messes you up. So I think the thing is that one of the things, and American Sniper I'm grateful for, and I agree that it may not be a classic in years to come, but this is what I love about film and television, perhaps why I love it so much, is that they act in society as a way of talking about difficult stuff. Because it's a fictitious interpretation of factual events. That's how I like to put it.
Yeah.
That it's based on fact, but there's a lot of creative license.
Yeah.
And because of that room for elaboration and creativity, we feel safe to be able to discuss these really difficult political and cultural issues. And I think that film is important for that reason as well. So I really like this film. And the other thing is too, and I'm going to be lambasted for saying this because it's really politically incorrect. I think there is a truth to the word terrorist. The film shows some graphic scenes of some physical acts against people that are depicted in the film as innocent. And I think that I don't care what colour, culture or anything you come from, to commit such horrific acts against innocent people, for me, is wrong, outright. And I think I think sometimes that we need to see that. That doesn't necessarily mean that those small minority of people that do that can then represent a whole culture or country or anything else. So I think we need to be really clear when we're talking about these issues and not just chuck them all in a washing machine and just go nuts. Anyway, Cable, your thoughts?
No, I agree with that scene we're obviously talking about with the child gets a drill to the leg by one of the terrorists or whoever. And I understand from the American perspective, people can get up in arms and you're like, well, what? There's two sides to every story. I get that. We've got to see that from that point of view, from that terrorist. They would see the Americans or Australian soldiers or English soldiers as terrorists too, because they're coming to their land doing this, this, and this. But I'm like, once you sort of cross that line, and you've got an innocent child, and you've got him on the ground, and you're putting a drill through his leg, and then you're putting it to his head. Yes. There's no other word but savage. I mean, you just don't do that. And I just think, whether that actually happened or not,
yes, I believe that's right.
I believe that happened. I mean, it doesn't matter which way you want to, what side you want to be on. You cannot condone that at all. And I just, if people are hysteric for them calling those people that committed those acts as savages, if you're getting upset about that, well then you've probably lost your marbles already and probably should seek further advice.
Seek some help.
Yeah, and also you talking about people who had issues with it glorifying war. I don't think it glorified war at all. I think if anything, it showed war for what it is. That there's two sides, but some people have effects, and some people can come back, and it doesn't really change them that much. But I think anyone that has to go through that situation, good, bad, or indifferent, you're going to be a changed person coming back, and trying to sort of fit back into life. Back home is going to be always a little bit different. Every time you hear a car backfire, you'd probably be on the ground and everyone would be looking at you a bit funny.
Yes.
I think there was something floating around. I did see a video recently, and I think it was an ex-army guy that he was just at a 4th of July thing, and the fireworks went off. And
it was on Facebook. Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, look, we take it for granted. Like, thank God we don't have to go go to war. But I mean, I thought Clint, like you said, all the male emotions and having him trying to come back and not being able to almost have a relationship with his wife anymore and his kids and trying to just come back to that world that he was once part of.
Yes.
Was just, it was never ever going to be seamless. So
yes,
the way that was portrayed, I think, was fantastic. And I mean, pardon, I can't remember the actual scene whether it did split back to. I think it did cross back to his life back home when he's obviously got his gun trained on a child that's got some sort of weapon. I mean, that moral dilemma of, like, I don't want to kill this innocent child.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, he's got this piece of weaponry, whether it was a grenade or a mine or something, that he's going to kill some of my guys.
Yes.
I've got to make a decision here in a split second, and I don't want to do it, but it's something that has to be done. And then having that flashback to home and him having the birth of his first child and stuff like that, it's just, I think Clint was fantastic in the way he structured that narrative.
Yes. Good old Clint. Well, that wraps up our pilot episode of our podcast. We hope you've enjoyed. We'd love to hear some of your comments and feedbacks, and you can leave that on the website. And until next time, we'll see you then. It's bye from me.
Bye from me.
Bye.